The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. When Jesus had crossed again in the boat to the other side, a large crowd gathered around them, and he stayed close to the sea. One of the synagogue officials, named Jairus, came forward. Seeing him, he fell at his feet and pleaded earnestly with him, saying, "My daughter is at the point of death. Please come lay your hands on her, that she may get well and live." He went off with him, and a large crowd followed him. There was a woman afflicted with hemorrhages for 12 years. She had suffered greatly at the hands of many doctors and had spent all that she had. Yet she was not helped, but only grew worse. She had heard about Jesus and came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak. She said, "If I but touch his clothes, I shall be cured." Immediately, her flow of blood dried up. She felt in her body that she was healed of her affliction. Jesus, aware at once that power had gone out from him, turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who has touched my clothes?" But his disciples said to him, "You see how the crowd is pressing upon you, and yet you ask, 'Who touched me?'" And he looked around to see who had done it. The woman, realizing what had happened to her, approached in fear and trembling. She fell down before Jesus and told him the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has saved you. Go in peace and be cured of your affliction." While he was still speaking, people from the synagogue official's house arrived and said, "Your daughter has died. Why trouble the teacher any longer?" Disregarding the message that was reported, Jesus said to the synagogue official, "Do not be afraid, just have faith." He did not allow anyone to accompany him inside except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. When they arrived at the house of the synagogue official, he caught sight of a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. So he went in and said to them, "Why this commotion and weeping? The child is not dead, but asleep." And they ridiculed him. Then he put them all out. He took along the child's father and mother, and those who were with him, and entered the room where the child was. He took the child by the hand and said to her, "Talitha cum," which means, "Little girl, I say to you, arise." The girl, a child of 12, arose immediately and walked around. At that they were utterly astounded. He gave strict orders that no one should know this, and said that she should be given something to eat. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord.
Okay, so we have here in the Gospel of today that kind of faith that moves the mountains. Because we have Jairus, this official of the synagogue, and he says, "Please, Lord, come lay your hands on my daughter." So this is already an act of faith. He has faith that Jesus can cure his daughter. And Jesus is aware of the faith of this man. That's why he's following him. And then we have a woman, the woman with the hemorrhages, and she thinks, if I but touch his clothes, I shall be cured. So she has faith that if she touches, she gets cured. So Jairus and the woman, they both have the same faith. And then when Jesus says, "Who has touched my clothes?" What is he really asking is, who has touched my clothes with faith? Because he knows that everybody is touching him. But not with faith, not with that faith. That faith is uncommon. But that is the faith that moves the mountain. Then somebody comes, from the house of the synagogue official, and they tell him, "Your daughter died." And Jesus, in that moment, is sustaining the faith of the man. Yes, because there is a moment, we might start with a great faith, and then we go down. Then our faith lowers a little bit. So that is the moment when Jesus intervenes and asks to the man, just keep on having faith. Just believe, just as you were believing up to now, as you are believing, as you have been believing up to now. And the man believes, he keeps on believing. So they all go. But then here, we have the act of faith of Jairus, the act of faith of the woman, but then we also have the act of faith of Jesus himself, because Jesus is a man. When we see him working these miracles, then we see God. We see the divinity of Jesus, right? But I think that we are wrong. What we should only see when we see Jesus this way, like in this episode, we should see the man, Jesus, full of faith. Because also Jesus is doing an act of faith. You know how much faith it takes in order to say, "Talita cum," I tell you, arise. It takes a lot of faith, because he's believing, Jesus himself is believing in the intervention of God the Father. The same thing, when he works the miracle, the multiplication of the breads, when he runs every miracle, the miracle of the resurrection of Lazarus. It takes an act of faith in Jesus himself. What I'm trying to say here, it's not that easy for Jesus to work miracles just because he is Jesus. Just like, for every saint who work miracles, as men, but only having faith, they worked miracles. So we are exactly in the same position. So why we don't see many miracles nowadays, or at least we are not aware of the miracles that God is working, just because we don't believe enough. We don't have that faith, the faith of Jairus and the faith of the woman. So what should we do in order to have that faith? You should just keep on believing when it's hard to believe. If you believe when it's hard to believe, then you will see the